All right, welcome Scavengers to episode 17 of the Six Scale Scavengers podcast, focusing on Marvel and Star Wars hot toys collecting. This is Brian Fontaine, the host, joined as always by my good friend, Chris Letty, Vintage Viewport. Chris, how's it going, buddy?
It's going great. Ready for another great six scale conversation. And we have a little surprise this episode.
We do have a surprise, Chris. So this is the first time in the history of the podcast that you will hear somebody other than Chris and I on the podcast. So we have our first guest co-host. And if you're in our collecting group, you will know this individual. But I'd like to introduce formally Roy Visser. Roy, you are over in the Netherlands, and you've been part of our group for a couple months now. And not only are you part of the group now, you're actually kind of part of the team, as we covered a couple episodes. So welcome from the Netherlands, 5 hours ahead of us right now. It's 2 o'clock in the morning there.
Yeah, hello guys. Thanks for having me, first of all. And indeed, I've been part of your group for about 3 months, I think now. I was the 50th member, so we're almost at the 100. So I think we're doing well.
Absolutely. So we're looking forward to a very spirited discussion. And there's a couple different reasons, Roy, we wanted to have you on. Namely, we needed to get some Star Wars up in here because Chris and I have been talking about way too much Marvel. But then one of the good things that you've been able to contribute to the group is some of the tips you've been able to provide to some of our listeners about toy photography. So our topic this evening will be talking about some tips and tricks, some things you've learned that will help some of our listeners with that. And as I mentioned, that review figure that we're going to be talking about this time is Kylo Ren from The Last Jedi, MMS 438. So great show. A little light on news, but we have some other news while we're on the topic. And some other exciting news in the podcast is we have started our Scavengers Assemble. Steve DeRose has done an awesome job with doing our hangouts for our listeners on YouTube, having very spirited, great discussions, giving like-minded collectors an opportunity to talk amongst themselves. I feel like six scale collecting, hot toy collecting, there's not a whole lot of us out there, and there's certainly usually never anybody in our neighborhood. I'm just lucky that I've got Chris that lives 1 hour from me in the same state that we can commiserate on a daily basis, but it's a great format. We all decided as part of the podcast that there's actually, the conversation is so good there that not only are those conversations recorded and have video, that it would also make a good audio portion of our podcast. So going forward with Scavengers episode 3, you will be able to hear the audio version in this RSS feed. So if you see another podcast show up in your RSS feed in a few weeks, that's what it's about. Hopefully everybody that hasn't already had an opportunity to catch that on our YouTube channel will give that a look. Roy, you've been on a couple times. Chris, you've been on a couple times. I've been on a couple times, and very looking forward to what that is. It's very different format than what we do on the podcast. And I mean, who doesn't like more collecting talk?
We all want more collecting talk. It's been great, that conversation. The conversations going on the Hangout are really interesting. We go into all different avenues, and it's a little bit broader conversation than we have maybe kind of on the podcast. But yeah, check it out. It's great stuff, and Steve again does an awesome job setting that up.
Roy, any thoughts about that? I know that you're coming to us from abroad over in Europe and the Netherlands, and I mean, I would imagine that there's not a lot of collectors there as much as they're here as stateside.
No, I think you guys are the closest people I can talk to about these figures. No, there's actually a lot of. No, I wouldn't say a lot, but I know a couple of them, but I haven't spoken to them in real life or on any kind of format like this. So it's very welcome to be able to join you guys or Steve or Matt or members from the group in conversation, because it's something I'm looking for, and now I found it.
So, Roy, let's get into your background a little bit, just to give our listeners a brief introduction to your collecting background, how you found us, and some of the things that you're going to be looking to do and contribute to not only the podcast going forward, but the website.
I've been collecting DVDs for ages. Some of you might have seen my collecting room full of DVDs, no figure to be found. And when the Blu-ray started to rise up, I saw my collection of DVDs just lose all its value and no viewing capability anymore. So I thought, what can I collect, or what do I really want to collect? And I've been looking for statues and busts to fill up the DVD cabinet as a change of scenery. And I always looked at action figures as well. Hot Toys was starting to rise up then, and I always thought I would love to own some of those, but all my money went to DVD, so I didn't have the amount of cash to spend on 6-scale figures as well. So after a while, I didn't see any reason to collect DVDs anymore, and yet just thought, now I'm going to collect what I really want to collect, and that's these kind of figures. And then I saw a picture of the DX11, the Joker of The Dark Knight, and I was sold on them. And the minute I ordered him and I received him, I opened the package, and it was something I've never seen or experienced before. They're such great figures, and the DX11 is still one of the best figures out there. So
it's life-changing. I think we can all kind of remember that gateway figure. For me, it's the Shore Trooper from Rogue One that everybody in the group is trying to pry from my cold dead hand. Your first figure, Chris, was Black Widow from Winter Soldier, correct?
It was, and again, it's such a great figure. And I, like Roy, I didn't think I would be getting into this collecting, but I gave it a shot, and once I saw it in person, I'm like, oh man, this is next level. And yeah, 30-something, 40-something figures later.
Yeah. So Roy, you said you've been collecting for a couple years now.
Yeah, I started collecting with the DX11. That came out, I think, somewhere in 2013. So that's roughly my starting period. I started out very slowly, which is quite different than most people, because once they get the hang of it, they start collecting like crazy. But I went slow and purchased the DX12, and then I believe Spider-Man from Amazing Spider-Man 2 was my third one. After that, it snowballed, and then it goes very, very fast.
Yeah, we can attest to that too. So, you mentioned it, Roy. You were the 50th member of our community, and you jumped right in, and you could tell that you were going to make a presence. And so, Chris and I are very happy to have you there, and also willing to kind of help out as well. I think that's one of the things that, as we talked about a couple episodes ago, as the podcast has kind of evolved, we realized that we needed some help, and the span of what we were able to cover wasn't as much as maybe, I don't necessarily say that the demand is there, because we do have a smaller group at this point. Our listener base is a little bit more than what our collecting group is, but that's really the core of what we've done and have been able to foster that community.
Yeah, it's actually one of the reasons I joined you guys. I was looking for more content, and I already followed some 6-scale or collecting podcasts. But I finally found you, and I started listening, and you guys were on the same level of collecting as me. And so I started following you. You both have great voices, talk about the figures very like I would talk about them. It was a normal step for me to join the group, and I already joined a bunch of other groups, but all were immensely huge. So there was no real conversation. It's just a bunch of people posting pictures, but never about their personal collection or why they're choosing this figure or that figure and what they are doing with those figures. It's not a small group if you all know what each other is, what everybody is collecting. So you just get more of an immersion and more of a community feeling, and I like that in the group.
Absolutely. We appreciate the kind words there. All right, Chris, what do you say? Let's get this podcast kicked off, and we'll be alternating Roy throughout the podcast here. We're really looking forward to that. So guys, we've all had the opportunity to see Captain Marvel in theaters. Let's have a conversation here a little bit about our overall thoughts. We'll keep it spoiler free, so we don't have to give any kind of a spoiler warning here. But Roy, as the guest co-host here, I want to throw it to you first and just get some of your overall thoughts about the movie.
I think it was a perfect origin story for Captain Marvel. I'm very happy with my day one pre-order of the deluxe figure. Me and my girlfriend saw it last week, and we both enjoyed it very much. I got a sort of the same feeling as Doctor Strange somehow, as we get to see more of her in Endgame, and that will fill out her character even more. But I already like this origin story very much.
Excellent. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I really did enjoy this movie. I came out of it smiling. You and I and Raul, one of our other group members, our listeners, who's local to us, we all went and saw it, and I just had fun with it. It was extremely entertaining, and I was really pleased with Brie Larson's portrayal of Captain Marvel, and I just loved seeing Fury as a younger member of S.H.I.E.L.D. and finding his way, and then, of course, Goose. So it was thoroughly entertaining, definitely a multiple viewing movie for me in the theaters.
I really liked how closely it followed the Kelly Sue DeConnick version of Captain Marvel that we saw in, I think it was 2012 was that run. I've gone back since because I have a subscription to Marvel Unlimited, and highly recommend it if you love reading comic books and you don't want to pay through the nose to have things come out new. I think it's like $60 for the entire year. I, like most people, didn't really know much about Carol Danvers or Captain Marvel, and just reading some of those comics a few months ago, I really got geared up for this film, and I think I would agree with both of you. I thought it was a really good origin story. I'm going to get to the point where it's very hard to rank these films.
That's impossible.
It's really impossible, because even some of the ones that are like lower on my list, I still have things I enjoy about it. So I'll just leave it as I really love Brie Larson's performance in this, and I feel like she played the character to a T in the comic books and is well represented. And if anybody had any issues about how she was portrayed or anything like that, all I got to say is just read the comic books and you'll see what it is. And I'm really excited to see what could go on. I know I've said before on the podcast, it's just my own speculation, not really any spoilers, but I have this really bad feeling that she's kind of like the new Captain America. And if that has to be the case, then I'll just going to have a whole case full of Captain Marvel figures, guys.
It's really easy to give you an excuse to just buy figures.
I mean, let me put it this way. I love the film so much, guys, that I like both of you. I love that day one pre-order is like a thing now. A couple of people in the group, I think Nick even said, I had to look at it at first because it was like DOPO. I'm like, Dopo? What's Dopo? Oh, day one pre-order. So yeah. I don't know. I don't think Dopo is really going to catch on as much. But anyways, I love the film so much that I've contemplated, I know Steve has also mentioned this as well, about getting a second Captain Marvel figure, potentially the standard version, so you can have one on display in her binary form with the helmet on, and then one with the Brie Larson head sculpt there. And I don't know, I'm not as crazy to think about that. I still, my speculation, Roy, and I think we were talking with you offline, and you had mentioned that they left a MMS number gap between Captain Marvel and Commander Cody, correct?
Yeah, we're still missing one number. So fingers crossed for a Captain Marvel figure, maybe the other outfit, the green version.
Yeah, the Star Force one. Yeah. The Vers or Vers or whatever they were calling her. Eventually, at some point, we will kind of lift the spoiler warning and talk about the film more in depth. We do focus on the collecting side of things, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention how excited we are about the film. And the other thing, guys, we're 1 month away, well, a month and a half technically, from Avengers Endgame, and we still don't know anything.
It's weird. It's so weird. Not even a great trailer or a full trailer. So.
Nope, just teasers, just giving us little bits and bobs to totally speculate on. It's crazy that it's this close, and it goes to show that Marvel is just this global phenomenon because of the success of Captain Marvel worldwide at the box office. I mean, I'm looking at Box Office Mojo. It's March 12th. I mean, she's already at 490 worldwide, and it just opened this past weekend. So, I mean, this is going to be a great way to roll into Endgame, and I think people are going to be that much more into it, especially people that maybe this movie is their jumping off point for the MCU. Who knows? And I think it's a great point to jump off and get involved, and then they have that backlog of awesome movies to go and check out. So I don't know. We thinking more figures from this movie or what? Possibilities?
I don't know, Roy. I don't know if you disagree, but I think this is probably it. I think maybe down the line we may get a couple more. If you even look back at some of the other origin films, such as, I know Cap, First Avenger, we got several versions of Cap, and we got the Red Skull. But other than that, there wasn't really as much. I would have loved a Peggy Carter, a legitimate Hot Toys Peggy Carter. But I don't know. I think the one, my speculation a little bit about the character of Captain Marvel, and I know can't remember who in our group found an old interview that I think Howard Chan had done for Hot Toys, and they were talking about Black Widow being one of the most popular characters like worldwide, and leading sales for figures. And I just think that Captain Marvel is so much more fascinating than Black Widow. And I love Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson does an awesome job. I can just envision Captain Marvel being one of like the top worldwide sellers, just because people are craving a strong female character, and Marvel gave us one here.
I can see that too. I mean, it's totally in the realm of possibility. And I guess, we'll kind of see how this figure does, and maybe going forward after Endgame, we might start seeing different Captain Marvel figures popping up.
Yeah, I think if we get another figure from this movie, it will only be a Captain Marvel figure. Maybe a Hot Toys exclusive or a Sideshow exclusive, but I doubt we'll get any of the other bad or good guys.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's like you're right, Roy. I think it's going to be a summer exclusive, San Diego Comic-Con, maybe a New York Toy Fair. I mean, it's been, we're recording this podcast here stateside on March 12th. It's March 13th over in the Netherlands. We have not had a figure update since February 15th. And Roy, that's what I wanted to start off the news. I guess the news that we have to share with everybody is there is no news. We have some breaking news. Hot Toys has not closed up shop. They still exist. They have not decided to stop making figures. But Roy, one of the really good things that we've come to know about you is the checklists and everything that you keep record keeping wise of figures puts what I do on the website to shame. So one of the things you've been able to help us out with is really kind of understanding year over year and trending analysis. And I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but basically we shouldn't really be that concerned about what we've gotten to date in this long gap in time here, because it's fairly consistent from what they've done in the past.
There should be slight concern, I think, if we're looking at the releases, so just released figures, we're not in any worry. There was last year. In 2018, there were only 2 figures released in March, and that was March the 3rd and March the 28th, I believe. So we're in that period now. But during that time, there were, I believe, 8 or 9 figures announced. And we haven't had an announcement for a while now. So I think we're ramping up for Endgame figures, but they're just not allowed to show us pictures yet.
I think Roy might have hit it on the head, is the disclosure of, the actual, what the figures actually look like for Endgame. Yeah, it is kind of a bummer not getting any releases coming out. We all crave that Friday morning release, promo images released for a certain figure that we've been waiting for or whatever. But it's tough. It's tough because for me personally, I'm kind of glad that there's a break here. It kind of gives you a little breather, and with certain delays on other figures and stuff, it's even more of a breather. I think Hot Toys is just ramping up, but from what Roy's numbers look like compared to previous years, they're going to have to step up their game for the rest of the year to really fill those spots.
To me, I'm going to be completely honest. And of course, inevitably, Roy, as you know, as a listener and now a contributor, whenever we drop a podcast episode, we're almost guaranteed to get a release like the following day. So
I can't wait.
Yeah, it ends up being old news by the time we record, and it takes me a lifetime to edit this, so we sound a lot better than we are. So even you're getting the behind the scenes look now, and you're like, those guys aren't anywhere near as professional as I thought they were. But I really, the two figures that come to mind that I'm really kind of semi-concerned that we haven't gotten the releases yet is Obi-Wan Kenobi, both the standard and deluxe version from Revenge of the Sith. I really feel like we should have already gotten the Mark 50 out in Hong Kong. That has to happen pretty quick. And that was originally a target date of like April. It's looking less likely that that's going to happen to be released here stateside in April for that Mark 50.
As for the Mark 50, yeah, I hear you there. It does seem it's going to be tight. If it hasn't released in Hong Kong yet, it's usually at least a month, roughly. For a little while there, back in the fall, we thought the release dates were going to be a lot closer than Hong Kong, but it hasn't trended that way for the US releases through Sideshow. So a month out, I mean, we're going to be pushing it before Endgame's release. So it is kind of a bummer, but who knows? Maybe it'll coincide with Endgame, the release of Endgame in theaters.
If I look at the release date for Obi-Wan, we're still roughly at 360 days later than it's announced, and there are actually a whole bunch of figures which were later than that. So if you look at Batman, the tactical suit version, that is 500 days after it was announced. So we still have quite a bit to go before we're reaching that amount of time. But I'm actually waiting for Obi-Wan, so they better hurry a bit.
You better hurry up. Roy said so. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I do think that this kind of speculation that we've all shared about Endgame, and I think there'll be a trailer soon. I think they want to I would assume probably let Captain Marvel have about 2 weekends in the movie theaters before Endgame kind of comes in. And they certainly don't want to steal thunder from themselves. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think basically once we're about a month out, so I would say probably later this month, maybe, the 26th, 27th or so, I think that's when we're going to start probably getting some of the Entertainment Weekly stuff that they do, the photo shoots. We'll get a little bit more information. I really do think, if you guys remember when Infinity War came out and there was like almost day after day after day where we got like multiple releases in a row, I think it started with, I think that first day was Groot and Rocket and Thor. And then it just kind of went down the line for almost like 2 weeks. Every couple of days, we got more. I think Loki was thrown in there at some point too. And I think that I think that very well could happen. And then we won't be complaining at that point, because then we're going to start projecting out our budget for 2020, and it's going to look like Thanos snapped his fingers on our budget.
Yeah, all the complaining will be out about the wallet and the amount of money we're spending.
That's a 100% given right there.
Couple other things. So, Chris, you and I have talked a couple episodes ago. We're like, where's that eBay coupon? Well, on March 12th, we got the eBay coupon, 15% off, $100 max, and inevitably things tend to happen on eBay day.
Yeah, I'm currently setting up my cart right now to do my final purchase. So,
what are we getting?
You got 30 minutes left.
I know, right? I looked at the clock. I'm like, oh shoot, I got to get this thing done. I've got some stuff I'm working on. Nothing major, nothing to Brian Fontaine's level, but I'm getting a little bits and bobs.
Roy, did you pick anything up?
Not today, but yesterday I did, so I'm kind of bummed about that code now.
Yeah, not only was I bummed about it, because I also made a fairly decent purchase that I won't necessarily talk about on this podcast, because I usually like to wait till I have it in hand to talk about it. But I will share, just because for a while, a lot of our listeners know, people in our group have known, I've been looking for a Falcon from Civil War. Roy, I got so desperate that I actually enlisted your help as well to see if you could help me find one overseas in the Netherlands, and you helped our buddy Steve out, which is great. So I did find one, and there's a story I had kind of shared on the Scavengers Assemble about that. And the funny thing is the one that I had tried to make a deal for, that one, instead of making a deal on the group, I actually bought the same figure on eBay for much less than I originally had offered the guy through the group. So patience is a virtue.
Score. Total score.
Which the funny thing is that ended up being a win-win for both of us, because he got the price he was looking for. Because the thing about the eBay coupons is we, the buyers, get the benefit of the discount, but the seller still gets the full price. Like eBay doesn't deduct, like the seller doesn't know that eBay coupon was used, and they don't get less because of that. So eBay, which is surprising to me that eBay does the coupons as much as they do, because a lot of people like us use it to its full advantage, and they really must take a hit on their bottom line for that.
Yeah, 15% on such a figure is quite a lot of money. That's not their regular amount of fees, I believe.
They usually get 10%. There's pros and cons to it. I think it keeps people going back to their site, using it regularly on the non-coupon days, but eBay is a necessary evil.
Yes, it is. And thank God for eBay, because I don't think I would have most of my figures. And these coupons really, I mean, I've used them not every single time, but almost every time. It's those 15 and 20% coupons it's hard to not use them. The 10% ones are nice, but it's not quite as good of a discount there.
To quote our good friend Ron Burgundy, Chris Letty uses an eBay coupon 60% of the time, every time.
Well, I believe the whole group went crazy today. So.
Oh yeah. There was there's definitely some instigating going on there.
A couple other minor things we'll talk about. Chris, you got an email from Sideshow saying that your Thanos was delayed. Is that correct?
Yeah, unfortunately, last week I did, or I think it was Friday, I had received an email saying that Thanos was delayed. Now the time frame, it shifted to April to June time frame, I think it was. So it's didn't say it was definitely shipping in April, but it did say it was delayed at least another month.
Which to me, I think that means you're probably in that second or third wave of pre-orders, especially being late, because a lot of people here stateside do have it. So people that had like those day one pre-orders or within the first last year, this time, I think they are the ones that, will probably be shipped first. But I don't know, guys, like the popularity for Thanos seems to be very strong, despite some of the issues that I feel like people have had with that really early batch from Hong Kong. I think this one's going to waitlist pretty quick.
You think so? I mean, it's possible. It's one of those figures that it's either going to waitlist really quick or it's going to sit on Sideshow for a while. I don't know.
I mean, like Gladiator Hulk has sat there, but to me, that's very specific to one scene, where Thanos has an entire film to basically be the protagonist. I mean, you could argue that Infinity War is his film.
Yeah, it may be that people are waiting for the Endgame version, which maybe has the armor.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were saying that they're going to wait till there's one that has armor, but who knows? We might never even get that one.
I'm a little gun shy about never saying never about certain figures, because we've been operating this whole time thinking we're going to get us, an Infinity War Falcon, an Infinity War Vision, an Infinity War Scarlet Witch. I'm not bitter. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see about Thanos, and I think it's an interesting conversation to have about waiting for Endgame versus the version that we've got. I mean, just seeing some of the reviews and stuff. I know PJ the Paradox Nerd has got a great 4K video on YouTube. I love having that thing on like my big screen TV in the living room, seeing that in all its glory. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm still kind of on the fence about getting the figure. I'm one of those ones that I'll probably pass on it, regret it, and then probably end up paying twice retail at some point. But that's my luck. So
classic.
Yeah, classic Bryan move there. And another thing, I personally have not gotten an email. Chris, I know you have not gotten an email either. We're kind of in the dark about what's going on with the Black Panther figure from Sideshow. I haven't seen anybody post in a group saying that they have gotten an email, but I'm also seeing people stateside here that now have it. So I don't know if it's that, that first wave again that we're looking at, but I really want that figure.
For your black light.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's the thing too. Is I want to get the figure in as soon as possible so I can part out the stand and the black light to somebody on eBay, make a little money back, and then just use my little handheld blacklight flashlight that I have. All right, so as we normally do, and this will be good to include you, Roy, on this, is giving our collection update. So again, as the co-host, as the guest co-host here, we want to kind of give you an opportunity. Chris and I usually have the opportunity to share what we've going on. Try to be transparent. Like you said, one of the things about the podcast is being genuine. And I think it's easy to relate with somebody that has to adhere really to a budget and makes tough decisions about buying and selling and keeping space as a consideration.
Well, keeping space as a consideration is not really my forte, but
Roy, one of the things that most of our group members know about, but maybe some of our listeners don't, is you have, when we talk about having space considerations in mind, you have to take that to the 10th degree. You have such a small area that you have so many figures in storage that it's like, okay, you only can display a certain number at a given time. So it's like opening new figures or opening old figures and it's new to you.
Yeah, that's actually quite fun. I had 3 new releases today instead of you guys with 0. But yeah, I have to watch my space, and I've gotten into some trouble with that. And now that I'm actually using Photoshop to already fill my cabinets, and that way I can look more closely at what I need, what I want, and what I shouldn't get. It's hard to not get certain figures I want, and I can't make myself get rid of older figures like you guys, or at least Bryan is doing. But it's hard to...
Don't tell anybody.
But it's just very hard to get rid of some of my older figures. I'm trying to sell one of my first figures, the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I've had 7 people asking me for a different price and agreeing on a price and then not end up buying it. So it's hard for me to keep trying to sell it.
That's a conversation for a whole nother time too, about the soft market that's there in the Netherlands versus the ultra competitive pricing that's here stateside for those collectibles.
Yeah, the difference is huge. Here in the Holland, we're all very straight-minded, and we won't pay anything more than what it was new. And over there in America, you guys will pay double the price for a figure, and that's I can see that value, but most people here in Holland can't.
I don't know what you're talking about, Roy.
None of us have done that before.
Iron Man Mark 47.
Yeah, but I believe that was your own fault, right?
Well, yeah, you would know that as being a listener there. So anyway,
I'm a trusted listener.
Yeah. All right. So Roy, anything that you did add to your collection recently?
Yeah, I bought a bunch of parts. I came across upon a deal which I couldn't resist. It was Infinity War Captain America, head sculpt, his body, his pants, and a whole bunch of accessories. And I already have that figure, but I just couldn't pass it. It was $40, I believe. So that's an immense deal. And it made me look for Steve Rogers outfits on the internet. And that made me look for Tony Stark outfits on the internet. And so I ended up buying 3 Tony Stark outfits and 2 Steve Rogers outfits and a bunch of bodies. So it all snowballed a bit for me. But I'm very...
It's a bit of a rabbit hole there, sir.
Yeah, once you go custom parts, you can find so much, and then you can find a whole different genre of collecting, and they're not that expensive, and I'm just willing to try something out. And I think it's a great addition to having multiple head sculpt with the collecting figure or with the Hot Toys figure. So, like you said, you're thinking of getting another Captain Marvel figure just for the head sculpt, or with the possibility to pose her with in 2 outfits. But you might be able to just get a separate body and
You could have a disguise version, like in the film where she had a 9 Inch Nails t-shirt on, one for that 90s grunge look that we're all too familiar with, at least for us in that age bracket. But
yeah, but it's a great addition to your collection, and it's not that expensive to just get 2 figures for the price of one. A separate body will cost you roughly $20 to $30, and the outfit maybe between $40 to $60, and that's $80 for a head sculpt you might end up not using anyway.
This is related to what we're talking about, but not really. It's kind of on this tangent. But one thing that we've learned about our new podcast host, Steve, is his 1/6 scale clothing budget is greater than his full scale clothing budget.
Yeah, it's weird. I just paid like, I think $50 for 1/6 jeans. And if you try to explain it to someone, it's kind of ridiculous. But they were the perfect look for my figure, so I had to get them.
Of course.
It's weird.
Convince yourself.
Yeah, I needed that coupon.
Oh, so sorry, Steve. I had to just share that. But all right, Chris, let's move on to you. What do you got new coming?
Yeah, kind of in the same vein as Roy, I'm kind of working on a Kit Bash figure, but it's kind of out of left field. I saw on one of the websites, I think it was TNS Figures, they had a Doc Watson figure from CGL Toys, and it's Martin Freeman, who plays Everett Ross, who's the CIA, I think he's CIA agent in Civil War and Black Panther. And I thought, oh, that would be really cool to have a Kit Bash figure of Everett Ross to go with Black Panther and Killmonger, Shuri, other figures. So I'm kind of piecing that together. The figure's relatively affordable from that site, free shipping. And then I put together a suit and a gun with some holsters and stuff like that. But it's going to be a work in progress because the suit is too big. And this is kind of my first foray into putting together a whole figure as opposed to buying a full outfit and kit from one of these other sites. So, I mean, that's pretty much it on the 1/6 figure purchases this go around. How about you?
So what you're telling us, Chris, though, is you need a 1/6 tailor.
I do. So anybody out there that knows a 1/6 tailor, just shoot me a message.
Not a full scale 1-to-1 tailor. We need a 6 scale tailor.
Yes, and I don't know how a real tailor would feel if I actually walked in and say, "Hey, can you tailor these pants to this body?"
Can you have these jeans?
It would almost be worth it just for the video, like to do it on video.
If you ever have the courage to do that, I will follow you in and I will record the segment and we'll put it on the podcast.
That would be gold.
Maybe a trip to the dry cleaners will sort out the size issue.
Oh my goodness.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was a little bit busier and I have some things on the way from eBay, so I'll talk about them on in more depth on a future episode when I actually have them in hand. It's just a superstition of mine. I know I spilled the beans on having the Falcon on the way, but it's one I've been looking for a long time, so I'm excited about that. So, Chris, you talked about Raul, and we had the opportunity to go see Captain Marvel with him last week. Well, one of the really good things about our community is, thankfully, we're not really turning into a buy-sell trade group, but I think people also understand that when you have a tight-knit community and you're looking to make a sale, that sometimes it's not worth the hassle to go to some of the larger groups. And if you're working with somebody that you've interacted with quite a bit, there's more of a trust level there. And we've had some people, myself included, that have had some pretty successful sales on the group. And Raul had posted a couple things last week, and a couple figures went pretty quick. There was like a homemade suit Spider-Man that he had, a couple other figures, a couple Captain America figures. And then he posted that he had 2 Ant-Man figures. And as I mentioned, very competitive pricing, much better than you're going to see on another larger group or on eBay. And I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, buddy, what's going on? Hey, what do you want for? And he had the Civil War Ant-Man and the Ant-Man from his, standalone film, I guess I want to call it. I knew that I was going to be seeing him the following night at the movie theater. And I said, hey, what do you want if you literally hand me the figure and we don't have to worry about shipping and stuff? And you know me, I know you, we could do friends and family, and came to a great price. He goes, hey, what if I threw in the other one and we do this? And I was like, oh, that's so tempting. I can't say no to that. So I didn't say no to that. So before we saw the film, Chris, you saw firsthand, you saw the transaction take place, and I literally put the figures in the backseat of my car. And that was the first. That's the first time I've ever gotten a figure that it wasn't shipped to me. So I have to thank him again for being so generous. And then I felt really guilty because later that weekend, I stumbled across being able to get well, now I'm going to tell everybody what the other figure is. So I was able to get a Doctor Strange figure, version 1, for a really good price. And I knew that I had just set aside money for this other Ant-Man figure that I didn't originally want per se, but I also couldn't say no to it. So I actually reached out to him and asked him if it was okay if I technically took the figure and basically gave somebody else a very similar deal that he gave me. He's like, dude, no worries, no problem at all. And I would have just done that. I didn't want to just take his good deal and then try to turn into a profit by any means. So the Ant-Man, I think it's MMS 308, had a very short stay in the Fontaine household. But it's okay. It was a really good figure, but I'm like, I don't know if I really want Ant-Man to be a focus collection part of mine. And I'm like, well, if I have these 2, then I kind of have to get the one from Ant-Man and the Wasp. And then I have to get the Wasp. And I'm like, I don't know if that's how far I want to go into this. I just loved Paul Rudd in Civil War. I think he's got some really great lines. And that whole airport scene is just fantastic. So I did actually get that out of the box and put it in my DTOF right before we went on the air here. And it's a great figure. So kind of unplanned, but sometimes those are things that just kind of work out in your favor. And the other thing and this is not 6 scale related, but I've talked about it before on the podcast, that I have a focus collection of Shore Troopers where Chris has the Rebel Commando. And I was like, I'm going to start looking because there's a couple things as part of that I would deem things that are available at retail that I still do not have. And those things that I did not have, not only did I find them just looking late on a Sunday night on eBay, I found them for significantly less than they were originally going for. Apparently, people just don't like Shore Troopers as much as I do. So, when those come in, I'll share that. But think I'm fairly confident, and I can say that I've gotten almost everything that's available at retail that's not a Chase variant. I think the only 2 things are the Vinylmation Disney figures, the little figures with the ears on there. There's 2 Chase figures that I looked on eBay and I'm like, I am not spending $150 for both of these. It's just not going to happen. They're like literally not even 3 inches tall. And they're not even really an action figure. So that's what I'm telling myself. Although I do have a blind box of one of those coming in the mail from eBay that I'm hoping. Yes. I don't have OCD, guys, I swear. So I do have a blind box of one of those coming from eBay that I'm hoping is one of the 2 chases, and we'll see from there. But yeah, one of them was the Egg Attack figure. Beast Kingdom, I think, is the company for that. I finally got the Kotobukiya set for half off of what original retail was. That was one of the ones I was holding out for. And then I just realized today that I thought I was good, but then I realized that I think it's really only available overseas in Hong Kong. Is they did a Cost Baby Shore Trooper figure that came with the Salt Tank Driver, and I looked in, that was very pricey on eBay. So I think I might decide that doesn't exist in my world.
I like your technique.
Well, it's, I have all kinds of techniques, especially when it comes to like Iron Man figures, and I make all these silly rules in my head to make myself be able to sleep at night.
Oh man, we all do. So you're definitely not alone, man. I wish I was near complete with everything that's Rebel Commando related. But no, that's awesome, man. I love those short troopers. That shelf looks awesome.
So, and one of my most recent ones, I got to thank our buddy Mark Pearson, who was able to get me one of the carded vintage collection ones, and I've got that in a plastic case. It's on the shelf. It's actually one of my favorite things there.
Yeah, haven't seen those at retail, so I don't know where he picked that up.
I think he got an order on, I don't know if it was through Dorkside or one of those other, online retailers. And I think that's one of the figures that it was more than one to a case. So
okay.
He knew that I've got a thing for those. And I think that was actually part of one of our earlier deals, I think for Obi-Wan. It was a hard barter to get that to go. So anyways, hopefully our listeners like the collection update. And it's just something we're going to kind of continue to do as we go forward. All right, Roy, I know we've been talking for near 1 hour now, and it's getting to be 3:00 in the morning your time. So now we'll officially get to our topic part of this. I had a feeling we were going to just keep talking and talking and talking. But one of the things that Chris and I wanted to especially have you on as a guest co-host is to talk about some of your photography techniques. And I have appreciated from afar, and now I can appreciate it a lot closer to have you as part of the team. Just some of the photos you were able to take when you first joined the group, and there's been several in the group that you've kind of taken under your wing a little bit, and it's amazing to see some of the progression that they've done. I know Sean is one of those in the group, and so let's just talk about that a little bit and how you kind of get started. I know you've been collecting now for a few years, and what was the thing that said, I want to start taking pictures of these?
I think that came out of a necessity of not being able to look at my figures every day, since I'm already told that I'm limited in space. I have a bunch of figures which I can't see every day. So the thing I started to do is just taking them out of the box, putting them on a table, and just shoot pictures of them. So that way I can edit the pictures and take a good look at them and play around with them a bit, practice my posing. If it doesn't look good on a picture, then you know you have to fix it, and you get to see details. You're playing with the clothing a lot more, making it feel more natural. So it just started out of just looking at my figures more.
I mean, that is a good as an origin story as I could come up with.
Yeah, that's kind of how I want to go going forward, because like you, Roy, a lot of my figures, well, all my figures are tucked away. The techniques that you've shown on the group and everything, and it really is inspiring me to pull my figures out. We kind of talked about it on the Hangout. It's like, I can do live unboxings of figures that have been, never been opened before, and I can, do a whole photo shoot and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a good way to be able to enjoy your collection, even when it's in storage.
Yeah, and phone cameras nowadays are so good. You can actually start this hobby or this extra hobby or addition to this hobby quite easily. Just grab a figure, place it in front of you, and use some nice natural light and just start shooting pictures. It's just that easy. Normally, when you are in some of the bigger groups, you get to see a lot of people posting pictures of their figures, and lighting is the key to good photography. And with some small adjustments, you can get great results for a limited amount of effort.
And I think when people see the cover art for episode 17, you're going to know exactly who took the picture. And it wasn't me.
Yeah, not me either.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's mostly just there are two errors in the pictures I see mostly, and it's just the lighting and just not taking the effort to look properly at the figure and look at how it's posed and how natural it's standing. If you take a picture and you show it to somebody who doesn't know these figures, you should say, well, that looks kind of like, is it? And you can tell when the picture is good.
I will also say, as I probably should have referenced at the top, English is not Roy's first language. So I mean, it's just blowing my mind that we can have this conversation with somebody halfway across the world and having a common thread, and you're able to talk in our native language. And if I tried to talk in Dutch, it would just be horrible.
Yeah, I wish this was in Dutch. My language would be so much faster, and my chain of thinking would be so much faster. But I think I'm managing quite all right. I'm hopeful.
You're
hoping
doing
that,
better. You're doing
Yeah,
way
you're
better
doing
than Chris.
awesome.
You're doing way better than Chris
Okay.
usually does. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
What are some of the determinations, Roy, that you make when you look at kind of a photo and you're like, that's pretty good, or that could use some improvement?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to look at your picture is just if you think for yourself if it's good enough. And if you think it's good enough, just post it. And there's always someone who may be able to help you out and just thinks of something which can help you further up in the hobby. But after some small adjustments and mostly self-taught, I started getting better results, and now it's not just taking 20 pictures for a perfect shot, but I just need one. And that's the thing you have to just keep on to. Just take as many pictures as you want, and one of them will end up very good, or at least something which you can work on for later pictures.
So let's talk a little bit about equipment. Roy, you said that most cell phone cameras now take really high definition shots. It's kind of comparable to, some of the, it can be kind of comparable to some of the kind of the point and shoot stuff, but what is kind of your camera of choice when you're shooting your figures?
Now, I mainly use Canon 80D. I bought it specifically for this hobby, but before that, I just used my iPhone camera, and I got decent results. But I wanted something more, and with a dedicated camera, you can do more depth of field and play with lighting a bit more. But it's also a lot more options you can have with a camera, so it's more prone to error. So I think if you start out, just use your phone camera, grab a piece of white cardboard or black cardboard or red cardboard, just what you want as a background, and use some natural light and just place your figure in front of a window and start taking pictures. Don't use the lights of your Detolf or Detolf, and just use some nice natural outside light. That will work the best. And there are some very cheap options to fabricate a light setup like.
So Roy, you said that there's other ways to kind of replicate that. What kind of, if somebody wanted to go a little bit more in depth with that, and you said natural light, unfortunately, some of us are night owls more than others. Is there anything that people could buy equipment wise that would kind of replicate that same, I'm assuming you kind of want multiple different points of origin of the light so that you have more of that natural look versus kind of like a blast head on and have full of shadows and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm more of a night owl myself, so I use no natural light. I just bought two fairly cheap LED panels with a diffuser in front of it, so you don't get any harsh shadows. And I've been shooting pictures, around this time, between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning, so nobody interrupts me. I have no other light sources, so that way I get pure light and I can play with it as well.
So there you go, Chris. There's your mission.
I know. I really need to make this happen, and I too will have to take pictures at 1 or 2 in the morning, so none of my children or cats or anybody else will be bothering me.
Yeah, it's a perfect hobby. It's a perfect hobby for in the middle of the night. It's very relaxing. You get to play with your figures. Nobody is interrupting, and you can take as much pictures as you want and just play with the angles. And for I think for roughly $50, you should be set for at least starting out in this hobby. And I think you bought a lighting set already, Chris?
Yeah, I did. I bought a light box kind of booth, and it came with some LED tripod lights to go around the outside of it, but it's decent. I really need to mess around with the backdrops. It comes with several different backdrops. It's a nice kit. I mean, I got it on Amazon for, I think it was $60 or $70 shipped. So it's a good starting point.
It's actually the perfect starting point. It's how I started out as well. I used the backgrounds, and you have to iron them to get them straight, and the LEDs are pretty decent. But I started out like that as well, and it gave me some great results. But I actually went back in setup to just using cardboard at 25 cents a piece and some cheap LED panels. So it's weird to be using less dedicated stuff, but my results are the same or even better.
Yeah, I would say your results are very good too. Very, very good. I mean, it's great tips that you're sharing, because you can look at tutorials on YouTube and do some research here and there, but to get firsthand account of, your process and what you've gone through is really helpful for me, and I'm sure it's really helpful for our listeners. It's one of those things that I just wish I had more time to dedicate to it, because I feel like I'm not doing my figures justice with the pictures that I've taken of them. So it's one of those things I got to practice at, and I think a lot of us do. And I find your pictures inspiring. So, yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And for myself, it's the same. I have no time at all. And it's just, so I had to take the picture of Kylo Ren for the podcast. And I kept thinking, why am I not doing this more often? It's so much fun. Just holding the figure and just playing with that pose till you get the pose you want. And then just taking the picture and just looking at the figure in high resolution, you just get to see so much more details, and you can appreciate them even more. There's tiny, tiny specks of paint on the figures, and it's amazing to just see how well done they are.
So, Roy, to kind of close up this topic, there's going to be two things that I wanted to run by you. Number one, so what Chris and I are going to do going forward is we're going to ship our figures to Holland when we're talking about them. And if you're not on the podcast, we're going to have you give us a photo of it for the cover art. You ship it back to us, and then we'll be good.
Oh,
the other
perfect.
thing,
No problem.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid deal. It won't cost us any money whatsoever.
No, nothing.
The other thing is you and I have been talking, and I think the website is a great format to kind of have really evergreen content for that. So I know that's something that we just talked about. I mean, Chris and I talk about all the time. We're not experts. We just a collector just like anybody else. But it is something that we're going to look to put together so people will be able to reference on the website and hopefully get there for, some tips, maybe some of the gear to use, and just try to, just like what Chris and I do all the time, we try to pay it forward. This is one of the reasons why we started the podcast. Is we were out there looking and craving this information, saw that there wasn't a lot of resources out there, so we made one. And it's amazing to see where it's gone from here. And it makes me I'm very proud to see what it's turned into, and that others like yourself from halfway across the world will also recognize that and then see that, hey, these guys are doing really good things. This community is really great, and I want to help contribute to that. And I think that speaks to really what we're looking to do. I mean, we're trying to give, plugs to other people out there doing really good things, and it's about the whole community versus trying to be, the main place where everybody goes for 6-scale stuff.
Yeah, I love what you guys are doing, and I'm really proud that I'm going to be able to just help other people with I'm not an expert as well, but just with my experience, and I hope I can just give them something to help them grow further and experience more of this hobby, because I just love it. And I'm very happy to just be able to do that now more, and also for the website. And I'm really looking forward to just writing a small and detailed guide to just start photographing your figures. And I'm looking forward to just writing that.
And we're looking forward to it as well. I think it's about time, Chris, that we get to this feature figure review. And this will be interesting because you and I don't have this in front of us, but our friend Roy has it in front of him. So we're going to be able to pepper him. I know one thing our listeners have asked for is like, you guys are getting a little Marvel heavy. And that was another reason for bringing Roy on, because he's got more Star Wars focus than as he was giving me grief a little bit ago. I've sold some of my prized possessions in that line recently to fund my Marvel zombieism, as you've used the term before, Chris.
Yeah, we need some Star Wars love on the podcast, and it's great to have fellow members like Roy to join us.
And like unboxings with Matt.
Oh yeah, I know that's awesome.
Unboxings with Matt. That's a good thing that we can look forward to as part of the group.
Oh yeah. He's got a request.
I've already put in a request for the new figure he's got on the way, so he doesn't know that yet. All right, Roy, let's get into our feature figure review. And as we mentioned at the top, we're talking about Kylo Ren from Star Wars The Last Jedi. MMS 438, sideshow pricing, pre-order at $235. As best I could find, and this isn't a figure that I had, so I was able to find this out on the internet, is the pre-order was available, it looks like September 7th, 2017. And it looks like we got the release in Hong Kong on October 18th, 2018. Roy, one of the things that we haven't really talked about is, and you've got an additional little delay to get a figure even when it's available. It goes from Hong Kong to Sideshow, and then some of your local resellers or wholesalers, I should say, are then able to get the figure.
Yeah, indeed. I'm actually 3 months behind on your releases mostly.
So that would be a fairly new figure. This is a fairly new figure to you then, which is great for our listeners.
Let me check when I got it. Since you guys are getting the figures quite early now after the Hong Kong release, and I've been getting them early as well, but let me check when I got it. I received it 2 months ago. Yeah.
So yeah, right about in line. So maybe that's basically maybe a month or so after it was available in Sideshow. Looking at this figure from afar, Roy, this figure looks fantastic. If I had more of a Star Wars focus and if I had more of a Kylo Ren focus, I also kind of have a thing against villains. I just don't have I'm just looking around my collection now. Yeah, I don't have any villains. You know, he being the main, I guess, villain in the sequel trilogy here. So this is this is a little different for us, but I think this is also kind of fun too. So usually what Chris and I do is just kind of lead off with just overall thoughts about the figure, Roy.
Yeah, it's amazing. You should just get it.
All right, the podcast is done.
Done.
Nice.
Yeah. Order it now.
We'll see you guys in episode 18. See you later. Bye.
Sorry, I had to do that. No, it's when you open the box, you just see Adam Driver in the box. It's one of the best figures of the Last Jedi line, I think. I think that whole line is actually very good. Maybe Rey is a bit of a hit and miss with the head sculpt, but this one, they knocked it out of the park. The head sculpt is as good as you want. His expression is perfect, I think. It suits his character very well. The clothing is... They stepped it up since the last figure, which was very stiff and didn't drape very well. You had to use water to get the robe to flow, and they used some kind of different material now for the robe. It drapes extremely well, and his pants are from some kind of flight suit material. It shines very well, but it's extremely thin. So I think Hot Toys upped their game with this figure, and it's a very well done and very well put together figure. The paint application is perfect. The hilt is the same as the old one, but they darkened it a bit more. It looks more like it does in the movie. So I'm very happy with this figure.
All right, so Roy, I'm looking at the promo images they had on the Sideshow website. Accessory wise, it looks like it's got a comparable number of hands. You mentioned the lightsaber, and is there a separate hilt for the lightsaber, or is it you have to use the hand, you have to disconnect at the elbow to use that?
No, there's actually two hilts. One just loose to put on his belt or in his hand, and one with a light up feature, which I really don't like. I've never used those. I've used them once on the first Kylo Ren, and I broke his arm. So I'm never doing that again.
Fair enough. That would be what my motto would be as well. I'm the guy that won't put batteries in his figure.
So helmets can be done, but no light up lightsabers. I'm actually trying to make my own cathode lightsabers just for that purpose.
So I mean, overall, what would you say, Roy, about overall accessory wise? Fairly light, on par with what you'd expect.
Yeah, the cape is very nice. You can put it on him and it snaps on with magnets, but you can just pose him without it, of course. And he comes with a separate helmet, of course. And he is a bit light on accessories, but I don't think you need any more. I don't think I miss anything from the particular movie to be as an accessory for him.
You wouldn't have wanted a severed Snoke head by any chance?
Oh yeah, severed Snoke head or a penetrated, what do you call it? Penetrated Praetorian Guard helmet would be cool. That's right.
So the helmet you mentioned, Roy, obviously it's a separate head sculpt. I've seen a lot of people posing it with, kind of having his helmet underneath his arm. I'm assuming it's a full head sculpt and not just something that would go over the top of the figure, correct?
No, it comes with a separate pack, and you just swap the hats, and it's very easy to do. And what you say, everybody's posing him with the helmet in his hand, and that's why I chose to put it on the ground and have him step on it.
No, it's when people see the cover art for this, they're gonna, like I said, they're definitely gonna know that you took this photo. Chris, anything else you can think of?
No, I'm just admiring the pictures on Sideshow's website. To me, I always go back to the material that is being used for his tunic underneath the cape, the sleeves of his shirt and everything. I just can't get over how detailed they get at the 1/6 scale. The tailoring looks phenomenal. Roy, in your opinion, like the tailoring and everything, did you find any flaws with yours, or was it pretty much spot on?
Yeah, as I said, I've been playing with it all day, and the tailoring of especially what you say, the tunic with the ripped sewing in it, it's just amazing. And even if you pull on it, it doesn't change its form. No, but the sewing on his tunic is incredible, and I've been playing with it all day, and there's nothing happened to the fabric or the suit or the pants or his cape. And one tiny bit of feedback for Hot Toys would maybe change the boots for us 2 pieces, because his ankles aren't very well articulated now. Most of his body he's quite stiff because of the tightness of his suit, but the ankles it's very hard to pose him in some dynamic poses.
I think I get what you're saying there, Roy. So like the ankle pivot's just not there. I know a lot of figures do have the 2-piece boot. I think it's a little bit easier for like some of the Jedi figures. I know Luke, the deluxe figure, as the 2-piece. I know Rey, I'm looking at the Last Jedi version, and she's got that really soft boot. I kind of dislike that one a little bit because I feel like the backside of the boot, right where the ankle is, like it gets all scrunched up, and you can tell like there's not much foot in that boot, if that makes any sense whatsoever. The one question I have for you before we get to our awesome rating scale of the figure here is, do you think with the limited articulation you have for the ankle there, can you still get him in that pose like when he's on the salt plains of Crate there getting ready to charge at Luke?
No, I'm quite sure you can't pivot his ankles that way, but there's choices to be made by Hot Toys as well. And if you put him in a museum pose, he looks amazing. The boots are well done, but if you want to get a bit more out of the action part of the figure, then it's going to be hard with this figure. But as long as you keep him in relatively stable poses, you will be all right.
Roy, you've been on the podcast for just the first time ever, hopefully one of many, and you're already using Chris's buzzwords, so amazing.
Amazing. I learned it from you.
Yes. Soon to be a t-shirt someday on TeePublic.
Yeah, we got to get on that. This is a couple of, we need a day one pre-order one.
Yeah, the Dopo or Depot shirt.
Dope. It's a Dopo. It's amazing. Anyway, so let's get this podcast back on track as we kind of hit things home here, Roy, and be able to get you off to bed because it's getting late. Roy, this is the time of the episode where Chris and I come up with some zany rating system here. And I don't know, Chris, what do you think we should do for this one?
Maybe crushed helmets, Kylo Ren helmets. What were you thinking?
I was thinking more melted Darth Vader helmets.
Yes, I like your idea much better.
All right, Roy. So we want your rating. Chris and I will, what's the word I'm looking for? Not abstain.
Refrain?
Refrain. Thank you. All right, so Roy, yeah, no, you're correcting my English.
Sorry, that was awesome.
That was awesome.
All right, so Roy, Chris and I are going to refrain from giving a review here, but give Kylo Ren from The Last Jedi from 1 to 5 melted Darth Vader helmets.
Yeah, if I look at this figure, I think he's incredible. I have no complaints. Or if I look at this figure, I can't see any bit of improvement on the head sculpt or the outfit. Maybe his ankles, but I get why they did that. So I think they absolutely crushed it. So I'm thinking 5 out of 5 melted Darth Vader helmets for this figure.
Very high praise. And it looks like this figure is still available on Sideshow for retail of that $235. So You know, if this review sways you in any way, definitely give the figure a look and go from there. So
Yeah, take a look at that picture I took.
definitely that right there is going to get people to change their opinion. All right, guys, it's been a great chat. And Roy, this is the time of the podcast where we give out those plugs for our stuff and our friends in the community here. So, all right, Chris, big deep breath. All right, so we've got our website, sixscalescavengers.com. As we mentioned earlier, Roy is now contributing to that. So thank you, Roy, and looking forward to some of the content you're going to be able to put out there with some of these photography tips. We also have our Marvel and Star Wars checklists out there. Hopefully people found those useful today with eBay Coupon Day. And by doing that, Chris and I and the rest of the people on the podcast get a couple dollars kickback that we use towards the hosting fees, which the hosting fees are going to be going up because we're going to have more content. So another reason to help support us. And we've got our TeePublic store, Facebook page. We're on Instagram, Six Hill Scavengers. We are on YouTube, and that is where you're going to see the hangouts that Steve is doing first. And sometimes they're actually viewable live when they record it. So if you're in the group, we'll let everybody know when those are going to go. You will hear, as I mentioned at the top, if you were snoozing through the intro, the audio version of those will be on this podcast feed going forward. We have mentioned quite frequently our Six Scale Scavenger Collectors group. That is that group that we've been talking about. We have a very high bar to join. Be a listener of the podcast and answer the 3 questions. If you don't answer the 3 questions, we're going to have to decline you. You can try again. It's not a very high bar. If you've got friends or family that you think would like to listen to the podcast, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, and sixscalescavengers.libsyn.com if you want to throw that RSS feed in your podcast catcher of choice. A couple shout outs to people in the community that do great work. We got PJ, the Paradox Nerd, his YouTube channel doing reviews of hot toys and statues. Collecting Weekly podcast, they've got their YouTube channel too. So Zach, Dean, Jesse, Manny do a great job. Give them a listen. And finally, one of the best Facebook groups out there, second to ours, is Tashi Station Full Scale to 6 Scale Collectibles. Whew. All right, guys, I think that's it.
That was a good one. It was a good one. I really want to thank Roy for joining us. I think the collaboration with the website and all he's going to be contributing to that is going to be great. Looking forward to it. So thank you very much for joining us, Roy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. In writing, I'm way better at English than verbal, so I hope you guys have pulled through this episode with my my Dutch English.
You did awesome, Roy. We're glad to have you, and like I said, we'll be inviting you back again. Looking forward to all the contributions you're going to be able to make to the community. So thank you, and we want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. We'll be back with episode 18 very soon. And Chris, bring us home, my friend.
Excelsior.